Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul, and I'm just going to do a quick video on the environment. What is the environment? Well, the main pieces of the environment are water, land, and clean air. Okay, I won't go into all the specific other downstream type of action from that, but I'll really just focus on those critical areas. So let's talk about the environment on the government's perspective. They enact acts of Parliament. And these acts become law to govern things like monitoring air and water quality and emissions of greenhouse gases. They look at hazmat material issues. Okay, they look at basically working around protecting habitat of species, okay, at risk. So they basically come up with federal programs. They also work directly with the provinces in terms of supporting environmental issues at the provincial level as well. So basically the government sets a certain amount of policies, but so do the provinces as well. Let's talk about land management. We all know Canada is a vast country. We also know that we have only a small portion that we call as arable land. And I don't mean that it's poisonous land or anything. We only have stuff that it's fertile to grow things on. That being said, if you go to Saskatchewan, if you go to Ontario, or you go to Manitoba, you go to Quebec, you go to any provinces, agriculture is a key area of that. And part of that is we have very stringent standards on what chemicals we use to treat the land. Also how we have runoff and the manure and all that. So some of that stuff is driven by the provinces, but also the federal government has policies in play to help protect that as well. But yet you don't hear that from Mulcair or the left. They basically hear Harper doesn't care about land. Well, he does care. He does care a lot about it because he understands the importance of the agricultural sector in terms of exports, ensuring that he leaves a legacy behind. Let's talk about air quality. Okay, air quality is the air we breathe. We see smog gases here. Of course, Harper gets the blame because it's all GHG. But realistically, in the summer, a lot of that GHG that's blowing up, that smog that we see, is coming from the U.S., the coal burning plants. Second point is Canada's emissions growth, it's been declining. And yet you don't hear that from the opposition or from any sort of left type of green parties. And they're supporting that agenda. So you're seeing that from this graph. The second one I want to do is a list of the top 10 GHG emitters countries. Look at the top 3. Okay, the top 3 account for about 1/2 of the CO2 emissions. Yes, Canada's got a portion of that. And this graph was to try to point out the per capita, that we're a high ranking per capita. But we're a population of what? 35 million people. But look at how we're equivalent to Saudi Arabia, who is roughly about the same size as us in relative. Well, and look at where they are. They're 18.2% of per capita. So they've got higher emissions. Where do they get the bulk of their economy from? Oil. So is their process of handling oil and driving cars any more cleaner than the oil sands? And the answer is no. So why is that becoming a bigger issue? Well, it's a bigger issue because you've got people pushing Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the whole world going anti-carbon. And yet, we can't go there overnight. So why isn't statements made about that? Because it's easier to pander for that left vote or the green vote. And that's really what it's about. Let's talk about water management. There's a lot of spin going on this as well. A lot of the water acts fall under the provincial jurisdiction. Why? Because they're better equipped to deal with that. Okay. We also have, in case of Ontario, we have the Clean Water Act. Why was that in place? To ensure that our water was properly treated and we had proper skill set to ensure that people had quality water. That stems from Walkerton. Walkerton has nothing to do with Stephen Harper. It has to do with provincial legislation. So people need to understand the provinces drive some of this. And Canada has some of the toughest freshwater act rules in the world. The other point is we have government programs or different bills. The government program like the SDTC was designed and set up by Ralph Goodale. Justin Trudeau has promoted this program as a way to show how we get new technology to market. And green technology is key area of the economy. It's about 2%, which is about $44 billion. The other thing that you're going to see is there's been pressure on rail movement because a lot of the oil is moving by rail to the refineries in the east, which are in Ontario, Quebec, and down east into New Brunswick. So the government, because of a poor disaster happened in Lake Makitik, and it's sad that people lost their lives, but we had to change the rules. We made the rules tougher. And that's what you're seeing here, what happened with the new changes to the Transport Canada rules. Yet, the safest way to move oil is by pipelines. And all you hear from Mulcair is, Harper's not doing enough around pipelines. Well, there's only so much Harper can do. There's an assessment process that has other people involved in committee. So unless we get everybody online about economic growth and how we protect it, and that means the First Nations are involved, now we need to be careful with the First Nations. In a lot of cases you can get deal done if there's the right money on the table. And there's been deals done because of the money at stake. But you won't hear that from the opposition about what they're going to do in terms of bringing the First Nations involved with the process, or how you're going to streamline it. All you hear is Harper's bad, we good. The other point you're hearing about too as well is a good bulk of our oil is key as part of our natural resources. Natural resources are $400 billion of our GDP. And yet Mulcair has been incoherent with his stance. So when you cast your votes, you need to start taking a look at the rhetoric. And you also need to go beyond what these people are saying in terms of statements to actual policies. I didn't make this video to be about climate change. I did not. Okay, because you're going to put 20 people in the room and you get a different version of climate change. What I did want you to do is put some seeds of thought in your mind to go out and look for different information on policy. So the next person I threw up on the screen is David Suzuki. He's done wonderful work on the nature of things over the years. Okay, and it's good. He's trying to give an opinion on the environment. But I've given you two examples here. He's attacked every time the oil sands, okay, as being bad, 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 which is fine. That's his perspective. What he hasn't done is put the same energy in rare metals. Rare metals are very bad. And what are rare metals used for? Well, you got your cell phone, you got your iPad, you got any sort of green technology from solar to solar panels to wind turbines that require rare metals. And that they require those rare metals means it's an environmental process to extract and refine that metals. And look what it's done to China and Mongolia. It's created a lake, an environmental mess. So we want all these goods, but look at what it's doing behind. So is it really helping green technology? Well, you still have to extract and refine that, and some of these rare metals and lithium are very hazardous. So why hasn't the green energy people talked about that? So I'm all about economic growth. I'm all about the facts. But what people need to understand, it's not one-sided. It's not all about going pro-green. It's not all about going anti-green. We need a middle ground to have policies that drive economic growth to ensure that we put the proper controls in. There's nothing that you've seen from Harper indicates he doesn't care about the environment. People will argue on that, but there's nothing that's been presented other than biased articles that tend to go to sites that have their own agenda. And the reason why they have their own agenda is in a lot of cases to get government money, you need to have the idea of a doom and gloom about green energy. Okay? And that's how you get grants. The second point that happens is you're going to hear people say the forest fires are caused. Forest fires are not caused by climate change. Forest fires happen a lot more because of either human error or by lightning strikes. Okay? Now, the other problem is why these things have been worse is because provinces like BC and Alberta have cut their forest management budget where they'd go in and do control burns and clean up some of the dead brush. Why? Because they put their risk management and said they didn't figure that was going to happen as much. So some of this stuff falls down to the provinces in terms of setting priorities. Harper can do only so much at the federal level. So when you cast your votes, you should really be doing a lot more digging. Thank you.